Welcome to the node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for July 6, 2022. We'll follow the issue that was opened in the repo, which was number 1253. Before we launch into that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
I seem unable to promote, but Franzi needs to be promoted. Sorry.
Okay. I think I made Antoine co-host instead of you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
There, now you are co-host as well for the next
Excellent.
person.
Does somebody want to make an announcement about what the latest greatest is on the security release? Maybe Bethany has some information on that or something, or Richard.
As far as I know, I think it's been delayed till tomorrow. But I believe there've been discussions that I've not been party to as to whatever the current delay is.
Yeah, I have my understanding as of about 45 minutes ago that the goal is tomorrow, but there was at least one issue that we're still working on before we want to announce the new update. So we're hoping it's soon, but haven't actually, finalized exactly when that is yet. But I think as for everybody who's waiting for it, it should be fairly soon. We're just trying to incorporate the late breaking OpenSSL updates that came in after we'd already planned our release date. Any other announcements people want to share? Okay. Board meeting and CPC minute updates on the CPC front. Rich, do you want to have any updates on that front?
I attended the meeting this week, so you think I would, but of course I didn't think about it until right now. Board meeting CPC. So there are some nominations around that need to be made, or some things that need to be considered around who we appoint to the CPC and the board. I have to look to check how many folks we have, but like last year there was like TSC appointed one person, and that's me, I think. It was originally Mary, but she couldn't keep doing it, so I took over, so now it's me. And then the ComCom also appointed a person, which I believe is Giuseppe, although I know Michael, you're on the CPC as well, and a few other people, but through different routes. And with ComCom no longer a thing, we need to decide how we're going to continue to appoint those seats. I'm proposing, but I want to talk to Joe about it first, as one of the appointees and as the chair of CPC. I want to talk to him, but I think the best thing to do is just the TSC appoints two people and call it a day. So more on that soon.
Yeah, I even think for some reason I thought we'd had a bit of a discussion and maybe even wrote something down, but
I'll look.
I don't know where that would be, but
I'll take a look. I'll take a look for that. But if anybody knows where it is or finds something, please point me to it and save me that hassle. That'd be great.
Yeah,
we've already decided.
I had some remembrance of, now maybe we didn't decide, but like of us saying that, like, we'd continue with one person from the TSC, but then we'd have one from the greater community.
Well, we have that as well. I think we have three, and I think we have one community. Okay, who knows? But I'm gonna go find out.
I think we have two. I'm pretty sure we get two
Okay.
CPC representatives as an impact, and of course anybody who wants to be and join the CPC. Regular members can join, but we have two voting members, one which is like from the, two voting members. And I think what we discussed, but I, again, don't know if we wrote it down, agreed, whatever, was like we'd continue to have one appointed from the TSC and then one which would be like from the greater community. But again, we should find if we did that, because we'd have to figure out how we elected those people if we did, right?
We're probably going way too far down the,
Yep.
I think I seem to recall, rabbit hole on this right now. Point is, it's an issue. I'm going to try to find out where things stand and then go from there. I just wanted to note that it's a thing. So
Right.
expect to hear more soon.
Right. So what I'm writing down in the minutes is just it's time for the elections, appointments for the impact members, and we need to figure out how we confirm who we want to put forward, right?
That sounds perfect. Thank you, Michael.
And not, on the, so board, semi-related to that on the board is like, there was the second community director. That election is active. I'm not rerunning this year, so that's open if somebody wants to run. Then back to anything else on the CPC front?
So you're not running for the board seat that you occupy?
Yes.
And when's your term up? Is it like right after the election?
I think from basically once this election cycle is complete, that's when I'd be done.
Okay. And okay. Yeah, let's get some nominees for that then. Okay. Thanks, Michael. No, I don't have anything I'd want to add to that. That's just the main thing I want people to be aware of, is that the nominations and elections are happening, and there's
for a bunch of things.
Yeah, some things we'll need to decide.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And there are some other things, like there's voting members elected from the CPC itself. So there's basically a whole bunch of the elections. I think everything except for the chair, which was run a little while ago, and the first director seat, which is run 6 months off the second one. So okay, we might as well move on then to the issues. The first one is move stream development out of core. So this is number 43520. I know we did have some discussion last time, but let me pull it up, or if anybody wants to jump in, I'll pull it up to see if there's anything at the end in terms of future discussion. I don't see any new discussion in the issue.
Sorry, I was multitasking. Which issue is this?
This is move stream development out of core. So I know we had some discussion. There were some concerns. It's like, I think it's not like people are like a no, but it's not like people are just an instant yes either. So maybe I don't know if people do people think we should have something useful to discuss today, or we should just sort of say issue discussion continuing in the issue? Please jump in there. Okay, if there's no objections, that's what I propose. We'll just say, please, if you do have thoughts, please jump into the discussion and the issue, and we'll push it forward there. I don't see that it's like at an impasse or anything. The next one is proposal Node.js vendor namespace 434133. Again, we did have some good discussion last time. There's no new discussion in GitHub since the last time, but I think there are a number of sort of key issues we need to work through in terms of mechanics, what that would look like. And I think back to what is often mentioned, we want to capture as much as that as we can in the issue. So, and I don't know if anybody has anything they want to suggest we discuss today, but I'd be saying maybe we should again just say, let's say the discussion's continuing in the issue, and jump in there if you want to push it forward. Okay, I don't sound any last week, so I don't hear any objections to that. So I'll just note that in the minutes. Consider explicit string formatting module. This is 43382. I'm just seeing if there's any more discussion since the last time. Yeah, I don't see any discussion in that one either since the last time. We did have a good discussion last week on the topic. I don't know if there's anybody here who wasn't here. Maybe I should have asked for the others too. Like if there's anybody who wasn't in the last meeting who had questions or wanted to be brought up to speed or anything like that. I think if anything, I think my understanding is that one's kind of stalled out, waiting for us to make the decisions that we would need to make in terms of vendoring in more things in a vendor namespace. Does that jive with what other people remember?
I thought the discussion last time split into, there were two separate issues. One was should we have an API exposing coloring text, and then there was another separate question about vendoring. And that's as much as I remember from the last TSC meeting. It was kind of like it was at least two different sort of things that came out of the discussion around the specific PR around coloring text.
Okay, I do see the next issue is add color text method. And I'm just looking to see if maybe that was, no, that's an older issue as well. That may have been the one that drove the util discussion. Right, so James added it as part of the discussion of 43.523. And 43.523 is add colorized functionality, which was closed. Right, so I think it was added to be as part of the discussion related to the vendoring and colorizing and text formatting, all those things together. So I guess the key question is, is there anything we think specifically we should discuss this week or continue the discussions in GitHub on those issues? No strong thoughts. I guess, I'd say let's let the discussion continue in GitHub for another week. I don't hear any objections, so I'll move on to the next one, which is build dev container configuration 4825. And Tierney had asked for somebody to basically work with him on that. It turned out to be more, he just wanted somebody to be in the loop in terms of the configuration and what was set up. So I sat with him and he showed me some of that. We basically have some credentials from from Docker Hub. And through those credentials, we have a repo, which we already agreed to through the admin repo, where we build a container that includes the latest nightly node tree checked out and compiled, so that if you want to do development, you can basically just start up that container and you've got like a pre-warmed up cache of node to do a compile and development, which I think that actually would be quite useful. I'm going to take it off the agenda because I think it was, he got out what he wanted from adding it to the agenda, and it's just going to continue to move forward to improve it. Okay, Rich.
Related, there is a pull request for 43698. I just put a link in the chat if you're on the Zoom. For a very, very similar feature that can live side by side and can eventually be removed when Gitpod enables the ability to use the Docker image that Tierney has set up. But I'm hoping we can get broad consensus that something like Gitpod is worth installing and at least letting it as an experiment run for like a month or two until the end of open source day, which is the Grace Hopper thing we're doing this year, hopefully. I guess we hear back in another week or something like that. And yeah, both of these things will go a long way, hopefully, towards easing developer pain, at least on Linux. If you need to test something on Windows, you probably still have to compile it from scratch. But
For my benefit,
what's that?
I was going to say, for my benefit, what's the 1 minute description of Gitpod?
So Gitpod, disposable. It's very much like Codespaces. It's disposable development environments. So you just point, you tell Gitpod, open up this repository in Visual Studio Code in my browser so I can make changes. And by enabling pre-builds, it will do the warmed up cache and everything so that someone using Gitpod to develop, do something in Node won't have to wait an hour and a half to compile, won't have to install the local compilation tool chain and so on and so forth.
Does it take any cycles from our Git like ours?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's a separate company. So no.
Okay, so that's interesting. It sounds like I agree. Why sounds like a good idea if we can make it easier.
Yeah, I would since these things can coexist together, I wouldn't mind just having them all happen, and we can sort of like figure out which one we actually want to support based on, which ones don't blow up with great frequency or require a ton of care and feeding. Yep. Anyway.
Yeah, like, we don't necessarily need to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Is there anything we want to put out then, not sort of officially, but just some sort of message statement about that these are all experimental and, they may or may not work? Because, I don't think we're in a position where we can sort of say, yes, we've added it, we're going to keep it working until we've had more experience with it. Because that's almost the thing with adding things. We can add whatever we like, but it's the question then of that once you add something in, there's an expectation that somebody involved with the project is supporting it.
Right.
And then that would be my only concern with these things.
So my intention with Gitpod, and probably a good approach for all of these things, is step one is add it and do not document it. You have to know about it to use it. If the 3 people who are using it then don't discover like game change, like deal breaking problems, then put out some kind of announcement or documentation that says this is experimental, it may go away, but please help us and try it. It's probably buggy, it's an alpha, please do it, please try it and let us know, and then go from there. If it works, then you can promote it to something that we really support and use, and if it doesn't, then we can just take it away or just leave it in perpetual buggy alpha. But I don't particularly love that option, but that's my thinking. I don't know if that sounds right to you. I know that some people might not be might not be enthusiastic about the just do it and don't tell anybody for a little while approach. But I mean, I had to work in my repository. I had to work for a while to figure out how to get pre-builds and I had to like talk to the Gitpod people for a little bit to figure out how to get pre-builds working with something as, resource intensive as a Node.js build. So
I think I did notice you said that there's some time limit that the build doesn't complete in, so you basically have to do 2 builds or at least do a pre-build and then continue from that.
Right. So I have to do like this funky little thing where if I know I have an hour, so if I'm getting to 50 minutes and I might run out, because that includes the time to do the checkout and create the so if I'm bumping up against that hour, instead of letting it time out, which will then fail and then the user has nothing to use, instead I just exit with a success code and it just the VM goes away, but the workspace has all of the compiled artifacts that got up to that point. And so if that happens, and hopefully it won't, but if that happens, then a make should take, you know, a matter of minutes rather than a matter of an hour or something like that. So there's still benefit, but I want to see how often that happens, if it's something we need to document, stuff like that. And there might be other workarounds too. You might be able to just run make when you start it.
Fair enough. We did hit something similar when we used to test on Travis. Travis used to have a sort of hour, I think it was about an hour build runtime, so it's a similar thing. It will tend to depend on what's changed. So you'll probably be okay until we put like a V8 update in. V8 will kill the build speed.
Right. So the other thing we can do is, if we document it, is we can, you know, like, instead of, you know, suggesting that people check out the latest commit, instead they can, you know, here's the commit here, you know, here's a link to a commit we know is good, and just have a GitHub action that updates it or whatever. But I don't want to do that out of the gate. Out of the gate, I just want to let it run, not tell people, and experiment it with me and a handful of other people and see what happens. But the big advantage from my perspective that this has over these other things we've been talking about is that this is ready to go. Like we could, if we wanted, turn this on like right now, you know, if we wanted to. Whereas all these other things still have work that need to happen. And so to me, that's a big advantage, because we have an open source day coming up, and I really don't want to have to explain over Zoom to, you know, a bunch of people that they need to install download X code, and I'm going to wait while they do it or something. That just seems like a terrible experience for everybody.
I think the only question would be, like, in there you have it requires installing the Gitpod app. Do you know what privileges it requires for that?
I forget. Okay. I'll take a look.
Because really this change seems like nothing, right? Other than on its own, it's just adding a file, which, if it's useful, right, seems like a good thing to do. Any other questions on that before we move on? I think it's good if we have a number of things that might make it easier to get up and running versus having to build the whole thing yourself. And I don't think we need to pick one, right? Like, it's the more that are out there, the better, in my opinion. Well,
the beautiful thing about the dev containers thing that Tierney's working on is that that's a standard, or a de facto standard anyway, that's agreed upon by multiple vendors. So they don't all support it yet, but in theory, at least, eventually they all will. And then it'll just be a matter of having that, and we can like only have that, and then people can use whatever service they happen to like. If they want to use CodeSpace, is great. If they want to use Gitpod, great. If they want to use something else, fantastic.
Exactly. And I think the containers, as of a day or two ago, are now being built and pushed, so people could start to try that out.
Tierney tweeted about the dev containers, so I haven't tried them, but I did see he tweeted about it.
Yeah, no, me either. I think it's similarly, we want to, before we make too much noise, we want to let them bake a little bit, try them out a bit. Okay, moving on to the next issue, add Jeffrey Booth as TSC member. So there is an open issue where I think effectively, Rich, that we're having the vote, right?
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is, unless anybody objects, maybe after this meeting, although someone please beat me to it if I fall down on this, which I probably will. But at some point, close the issue, open a pull request, adding the +1s in there as, you know, a JSON file for voting, TSC records, and onboard Jeffrey. Probably have him attend the next meeting, I think, as a TSC member. If anybody on the TSC or anybody else really has concerns or something, let me know. But
last call.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, no, that sounds good. Be great to have Jeffrey added. He's done a lot of good work on the ESM and loader side and been pretty active, so that's great. Okay, the next section is strategic initiatives. So I'm going to see if there's any updates on the issue itself, because I often forget to do that. So let's start there. I do see Variate currency, so Targos updated there, and thank you for that. So let me copy that one first in as an update there. Actually, and I want to copy it as, make my life easy by making it Markdown. Oops, sorry, I'm just going to format a little bit. But basically the update, I'll just read through it. So basically we're still having problems updating to 10.3 because there's multiple issues. There's an issue on Windows. There's a Linux and sorry, these first two are our Windows and Linux debug builds. We're having problems. Mac OS does sound like there's a suggested fix, but basically says be prepared for other problems after the compilation is fixed. And the test hash seed has started to fail recently. So those are a number of issues, which we sounds like there could be used some help in terms of helping to get the next version of V8 updated. Just Node, so sorry. And then I'm going to go look at other strategic initiatives. So just give me a second to navigate to there. So Antoine, anything on core promise APIs?
No updates.
Okay. The next one, next 10. I think we had a meeting today. The main thing at this point is sort of trying to, so after the last collaborator summit, we're actually down to two technical priorities where we haven't done deep dives. One of them I had a very quick email with Targos is around keeping up to date with ECMAScript features, and we do that through V8. And we agreed we don't think there's really anything that like a deep dive would make sense. The other one is on better support for threading, for multi-threading or sort of multi-threading. That one, we're thinking, would be a topic that we could schedule the earliest time, because summertime's not a great time, is to do that actually in a collaborator summit along with NodeConf.eu if we get that lined up. So that's the current thoughts there. Otherwise, once we get through that, we'll be at the end of sort of like the current technical priorities. And so the work of next 10 will mostly be around trying to see if we can sort of help prioritize or support work to get the things that we identified as being important on all the other technical priorities going. So for example, there's actually a pretty active discussion on the single executable application proof of concept. And we've actually added an initiative out of that to the list here. So the discussion, there's a list of issues in that and a discussion ongoing. So I think that's good. And the idea will be like, similarly, do we need to have a strategic initiatives to support any of the other things we've identified, or even like feature requests? One of the things talked about for ESM adoption was, the VM module supporting ESM, which it doesn't today, but that affects a number of test frameworks. So, figuring out how we surface some of those priorities and sort of do our best to highlight them as things that we should be working on, and if people have tight cycles that they know that would be important to work. So that's next 10. And I think that takes us to the end of the list of ones that we have people here for. Anybody have anything else to add? If not, that takes us to the end of the agenda. Before we just retire for a short private section, is there anything else people want to talk about before we close out the public session for today? If not, thanks for everybody who's here, and thanks for anybody who's been watching on the live stream.